Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Jay Lee. I'm an application innovation specialist based out of Singapore. And today we are going to talk about Java modernization on Azure. So before we get started, I want to introduce my colleagues in the session. So my name is Jay Lee. I'm a principal solution specialist. So I'm taking care of the application innovation in Asia Pacific. To, Together with me, I have a Clarence joining us today. So he's gonna take care of the demo in the later session. And Kesuke-san has been helping us to put together the excellent content for today. Okay, so let's get started. Here's the agenda for today. So we will speak briefly about Java on Azure. Probably last like 15 to 20 years, Java was not really something that you can come up with when you hear the name of Microsoft. Microsoft has been known for .NET company. Now, Microsoft last few years, we have been doubling down on Java. We invest a lot in Java, and we are now part of the Java community. So I will go through the things that we've been doing in the Java community. Then we will talk about the Java application in terms of the development and the deployment. Then we will do the brief demo on what you can do with Java on Azure. So you will see a lot of live demo from Clarence doing, the running application on Java. Running application, Java application on Azure application platform. Okay. So let's get started. Java on Azure. So I mentioned this to you before. So Java is widely used across Microsoft. So at this moment, we have around 2 million JVMs running in production. So we have a lot of different services like LinkedIn. That's something you might use every day. Azure, if you're an Azure customer, like Azure Portal, the control planes, many of them are written in Java. And we have a Yammer, the social platform for enterprise. And if you have kids, right, who plays Minecraft, almost entire Minecraft backend is written in Java. So they're basically using JVM. And Android, we have about 50 applications published on the Google Play Store. Okay, so we use Java almost every day across the different services and on Azure. So Microsoft recently joined JCP. So JCP, if you don't know what that is, JCP is the community that drives the Java standard, right? So we joined JCP. Now we are part of this JCP process to define the future of Java. And also we joined Jakarta EE working group. So we are basically working with other vendors like Oracle, Red Hat, to improve the Java EE spec. Okay, so we are very serious about Java overall. And if you don't notice, now we provide the customer our build of own JDK. So today, if you run Java on Azure, and if you know this or not, now container services on Azure, they are using Microsoft build of OpenJDK in the back. So we provide the commercial support. Okay, we also give you the enterprise support for customers using Java. So whenever you face an issue running your Java application on Azure, you can have the end-to-end support from us. Okay, recently Microsoft joined JCP. So if you're not familiar with JCP, JCP is the community who is driving the standardization of Java. So they are leading the specs. So they are the one define the future of Java. So we are proudly, saying that Microsoft is part of this JCP, community. And also we joined the Jakarta EE working group. So we are helping other vendors. We are actually, basically working with other vendors like Oracle and Red Hat to drive the specs of Jakarta EE. So you can see the full commitment from Microsoft, in various community. And now we have our own build of OpenJDK. So if you are running Java application today on Azure, whether you know it or not, we are using internally our build of OpenJDK. So if you actually run your application on app service, for example, you are already using our own build of JDK. Okay? So it has a full compatibility with other Java distro, JVM distro. It passed the JCK test case, meaning it's actually fully compliant. And also, I mean, it provides you the end-to-end support. So if you have any issue running Java application on Azure, we give you the full support through the official Microsoft channel. So let's say if you have an issue with your application running on Azure, you can just go and file your ticket right from the Azure portal. So you see, we are trying to give you the best support for Java application on Azure. I did mention this briefly. So Minecraft is powered by Java. Okay, so the backend services are all written in microservices. And they are all running on Java 16, and they are running again on our own build of Microsoft, OpenJDK. So what I mean, probably you are curious. You want to ask me, hey, Java. I mean, what's so special about Java for what's so special about Azure for developing and running application? So we can start from here. We give you the full support with any tools of your choice. Meaning, if you are using IntelliJ as an IDE, if you're using Eclipse as an IDE, VS Code from Microsoft, doesn't matter. We have provide the extension for each IDEs, right? Those are like top 3 IDEs among Java developers when we provide the full support for every IDEs out there. And we support Maven, Gradle, and also, probably you must be using GitHub to host your own Java application. So we give you those support. Plus, on top of that, Jenkins and Terraform. Again, you can choose your own tool to develop and run application on Azure. That's actually the strength of running Java on Azure. And also, if you're serious Spring Boot, Spring Cloud developers, if you go to Spring Initializer, if you can search for Azure, you see that we are already providing various Azure SDKs right from the Spring Initializer. So you don't have to manually add those dependencies yourself. You can just get started right from Spring Initializer from day one. So run any Java application on Azure. We provide the full support for any type of platform. So of course, we provide the infrastructure as a service so that you can easily provision your virtual machine and run Java on top. We provide the container platform as a service. So AKS is the most popular platform among the Azure application platform. And we have our first party product called Azure Red Hat OpenShift. So this is together with Red Hat, we are providing the managed service for OpenShift platform. And we have a various platform as a service. For example, app service has been out there for quite many years. So it was actually first introduced in 2013. And so far, that is the most popular PaaS options in terms of the cloud platform. And we have a new service called Azure Spring Apps, which is like co-development between Tanzu team and Microsoft. So we provide you the best support to run your Spring and Spring Boot Spring Cloud application. You will see the demo of it later, presented by my colleague Clarence. And we have a new platform called Azure Container Apps, which is fully managed Kubernetes to run your containers without you managing any platform. So it's a fully automated, fully managed platform to run your container, which is running again on Kubernetes. And the last but not least, we have a function as a service. We have a best-in-class support for function as a service. So you can use your Java, Node.js, PowerShell, any language of your choice to run your function. Of course, Java is one of the main language being used by function as a service on Azure. Right. So we support from microservices using Packers, and we also support the Java EE application running on JBoss EAP, Oracle WebLogic, IBM WebSphere, and Wildfly. So we give you the right platform for right application type. So regardless of it's a monolithic application from old days or the new greenfield application written in Spring and Spring Boot or Quarkus. So we provide, again, not only the platform, but also the best practices when it comes to the security, right? Security is the most important aspect when you move and deploy your application on cloud. And we provide end-to-end from the code, right? From the code to the application platform itself, also including the runtime environment, right? So we are fully secured, enterprise-ready platform to run your Java application. So what's so special about running Java on Azure? As I mentioned in the previous slide, we have a fully managed offering to run any type of Java application, whether it's a Spring Boot or Tomcat based or Java EE running on Java EE application server. We support any type of application platform for you. Okay, from the IIS to CaaS to PaaS to function as a service. And we also support those workloads together with our partner, VMware, Red Hat, Oracle, IBM, and Redis, Elastic. I mean, you name it. We are working with other vendors to give you the best-in-class support to run your Java application on Azure. We have a very powerful service called AAD, which can provide the single sign-on for multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environment. And in terms of the region supportability, we have more regions compared, than like AWS or Google combined. So we have a lot of regions available across the world. So if you want to run something quickly, which is outside of your country, you can just easily run it on Azure. And more than 95% of Fortune 500 companies are already using and running Java application on Azure. So run Java application on Azure. What kind of platform is there for you, right? That's actually the something that you might be curious about. So as I mentioned in the earlier slide, we have different application platform to run your Java application depending on your application framework. So Java SC, you can run it on the virtual machine, of course, then you can run it on AKS. Of course, you need to containerize it, and we help you to containerize your Java application. We have Azure Container Apps, the Azure Spring Apps to run your Java SC or Spring Cloud, Spring Boot application, right? So depending on what framework you're using, we have a right destination available on Azure. So yeah, you can choose any type of development tool of your choice, IDEs, Docker, containers, build tools like Maven, Gradle, and we provide you the Azure Container Registry to host your container images. We have a container PaaS like AKS and the Azure Red Hat OpenShift, Arrow, and we have something called ACI to run your image like easily. And we have a fully secured enterprise-ready platform, you're backing up your application deployment and running. Kubernetes on Azure, we have service called AKS. A lot of customers are running their production workload on Kubernetes on Azure, and AKS is the fully managed Kubernetes platform, so that we help you to manage Kubernetes in production with a very little effort from the user. And we provide the 24/7, 365 support for customers. And we have a lot of certified experts helping your operation in production of your AKS cluster. Red Hat OpenShift is jointly engineered and operated by Microsoft and Red Hat. So you have a single channel of support if you have any production issue. Okay, so it's a fully managed platform. We take care of the management of the infrastructure for you. So you just need to run your application on top, and that's it. You don't have to manage the OCP platform yourself. And Azure App Service is fully managed PaaS to run your Java SE application or even JBoss EAP. And today you can even run JBoss EAP cluster on top of App Service So you don't have to look at Kubernetes or something else, or like IIS to run your cluster, JBoss EAP cluster. Now I'm going to introduce two new application platform, which is very unique. So before I introduce those platform, I want to show you this first. Okay, so Kubernetes is already a mainstream, right? It's very popular, one of the most popular popular technology in the world. But users, sometimes users are finding it too difficult to run in production. So now Kubernetes is becoming the platform of the platform. So a lot of vendors building the platform on top of the platform, top of the Kubernetes, basically, to minimize the complexity of running Kubernetes in production. So, also because of this reason, we have introduced two new platform, which is Azure Spring Apps and Azure Container Apps, and those are the things that you will see from the demo in action. Let's start with Azure Container Apps first. Azure Container Apps is a general purpose serverless container platform. So serverless platform, meaning you don't see the actual infrastructure because we manage those for you. You have to just focus on building your application, containerize it, then you can just run it easily on the platform. It's basically running on top of AKS. Also, it comes with the different technology. For example, Kata. So Kata is the auto scaler, very unique to Kubernetes. So you can scale out your containers based on different scaler. So for example, if you are using RabbitMQ and you want to build your event-based application architecture, Kata can help you to do it by auto scaling the containers by looking at the depths of the queue, for example. So Kata and Envoy proxy to do the incoming ingress traffic split. Probably you could use it for A/B testing type of requirement. And also it comes with the Dapper. So Dapper is the framework to build the distributed microservices for any languages. So not only Java, but also like Node.js or Golang and etc. So example scenario, so where you can use Azure Container Apps. First, you can use it for public API endpoint to host like RESTful API applications. And you can run background processing so that if you run like Spring Batch type of application, you can run it on Azure Container Apps. And thanks to Kata, you can build the event-driven processing application easily. Then also, of course, right, last but not least, you can run any type of microservices. Now, this is a different product called Azure Spring Apps. This is basically the platform, fully managed platform running on AKS, and it's purposely built for Spring Boot and Spring Cloud application. So it's fully managed infrastructure, and it provides you the code to deploy type of experience. So you don't need to containerize your application. We just do it for you. We patch your application container for you. So we do a lot of things so that you don't need to care about. You just need to focus on actual development itself. The rest of the things are taken care of by Microsoft and VMware team. So it's a fully managed PaaS for Spring Boot, Spring Cloud application, and it comes with a Tanzu components, including config server and service registry, and it supports the basic form of blue-green deployment for zero downtime deployment. You can auto scale your containers, basically your Spring Boot application, based on your own matrices or by schedule. And it can be integrated into your private network so that you can fully privatize your cluster. And all the things, right, that you need to do when it comes to running your application on Kubernetes, those are all taken care of by both Microsoft and VMware. We help you to patch your platform. We help you to scale your platform. We do take care of the monitoring, and basically data operation is all done by us, Microsoft and VMware. So when it comes to monitoring, because monitoring is something that you do every day for your Java application, we provide a service called App Insights. It's not only for Spring apps, but also the other platform like AKS, Container Apps, and App Service. Basically, it provides you the end-to-end application map so that you can see which application is calling where. You can see the every latency between services, and you can even see the details of the stack trace to see what is failing in your service. Okay, so this is quite handy to monitor your application. It's just like an APM service as a first-party product on Azure. I think this is enough for the slide. It's a nice time to see the Java on Azure in action. So I'm gonna pass it over to Clarence, and he's gonna show you the real developer experience of developing Java application on Azure. Over to you, Clarence.
Thanks, Jay, for that really informative overview of Java on Azure. So I'm Clarence Bakatsides, also in Jay's team, Azure specialist focusing on application innovation. I'm based out of Melbourne, Australia. So I think you're probably keen by now to actually see some of these services in action. So I'm going to take you through a demonstration where we'll look at running a Java application on Azure Spring Apps and also Azure Container Apps. Let's dive right into it. So for the demonstration, we're going to run through the Spring Pet Clinic app that you might have come across. It's quite a common application used in demonstrations. It consists of a number of services that make use of the Spring Cloud framework. So you can see those Spring Cloud components like the config server, service discovery, etc. in green. We're going to deploy this on Spring Apps and also part of this on Container Apps. If you want to find out more about this application and how we put it together for the demo, you can see the GitHub link below so you can find out more yourself. All right, let's get into the demo. So here you can see my Azure subscription where I've deployed some of the resources ahead of time so we can save time on the demo. First of all, we can see here Spring Apps. This is an environment we can deploy any Spring or Java-based applications. We actually support polyglot deployments as well now, but we're going to focus on Spring. If I click on Apps, we can see those 5 components on that diagram earlier that are already deployed. So the admin server, API gateway, customer service, vets, and visit service. We can see here we've deployed from a jar file. We also support custom container deployments as well now, and you can choose different run times. So we're targeting Java 8. Now, the front end to our application is in this API gateway. So we can see there's a public URL. I'm going to click on that to see our application. So here it is. Welcome to Pet Clinic. As you can see, we can drill down and see various data about owners, veterinarians, pets and their visits and so forth. Now, before we go further into the application, I just want to give you a bit of a run through of what it looks like in a Spring Apps resource. So we can see the region we've deployed into, the tier. So here we're just using the standard tier. And for example, if we want to use a config server, you can configure the URL for that. So for example, I'm using a publicly accessible Git repository to configure all the services. As you can see here, the YAML files for each of our services. You can, of course, use a private repository as well. If you need to have private networking, you can VNet or virtual network inject your Spring Apps. For example, if you have a requirement to not have any public-facing applications, you can configure your pricing tier. So we're using standard. There's also basic and enterprise. The higher level tiers give you higher powered instances like more memory, CPU, as well as additional features like commercially supported VMware Tanzu components. For this demo, we're going to focus on standard. Now, typically you should be running stateless workloads and leveraging external storage, for example, our PaaS databases. Now, if you do need storage, you can also attach a storage account like Azure Files or Azure Blob Storage and make use of that from your applications. So now what we'll do is let's run a load test against this application to generate some interesting traffic so we can look at monitoring logs and so forth. So here I've brought up JMeter, a popular Java-based load testing tool. You can see I've configured the host name for our API gateway or the front end for application, the port, and that we want to use HTTPS. So I'm going to go ahead and run a load test that lasts for 5 minutes. So it's going to ramp up to 5 users. I can change this if I wanted to say, for example, 10 users. We'll just stick to 5 for now because I'm only running a single instance of the application. So let's run this now. We can see it started. And we should start getting some results. So you can see the scenarios that are being executed. We're adding pets, we're updating the owner, etc. So let that run in the background. So while that's running, one of the other things that you get is integration with Application Insights, which is our APM or Application Performance Monitoring tool. So all our services are instrumented using Spring Sleuth, and we provide an easy way to integrate those metrics with App Insights. So here, if we click on Live Metrics, we can start to see traffic coming in from that load test. So if this was a production site, and we want to see how much traffic are we getting, are there errors occurring, this can give you live telemetry about what's going on in your application. So you could leave this running, for example, on a monitor in your team area. Now, another interesting area is application map. So once we start to have many services, how do we know which services are talking to other services? What are the dependencies? Are there latency? Are there high latencies between service calls? Are there errors? So Jay briefly talked about this earlier. Let's look at the customer service. So if I click on that one, we can see, for example, that it's making a call to MySQL server. So let's filter down further. And I can see there's a few SQL queries being executed. So let's drill down further into investigate those. Right, so I can see select pet clinic.owners is the second most time-consuming operation. So I'm going to pick that one and look at one of the samples. And click the sample. Right, so here I can see there's a call to get owners. So I'm fetching all of the pet owners that is rendered over here. So when I click owners all, I retrieve all the pet owners and then the pets they own and so forth. This is represented here. So when I make a call to get owners, now I can see all the database queries that are required to pull back that data from the database. So first of all, there's a query which you can see here to fetch the owners, but there's also multiple queries, one for each owner to fetch their pets. So let's say we're experiencing, for example, some performance issues. This helps us to dive deeper and understand what is our code doing. Maybe our SQL queries could be optimized. So here it's an N+1 type of query. Maybe we can restructure this to have less SQL queries. Back to App Insights. We can also investigate failures. So where are these exceptions occurring? Okay, I can see top 3 exceptions. Let's have a look at one of those. If I click on that specific instance of an exception, I get the exception message right here. So I can investigate that further. There are also metrics available and logs. So let's look at metrics. I want to look at App Insights metrics. maybe I want to know how many requests are happening. So let's look at client requests. Right, I can see there's about 800 requests on average over this period of time. Maybe let's reduce that down to last 30 minutes. Let's say, for example, I want to look at another metric. This is about the JDBC connections. Let's try memory used. So you can basically pull from a rich set of different metrics and create these charts. Now let's look at logs. So in here, we can run queries to pull back information that we're interested in. Actually, I just want to restart this part if possible. I made a mistake. So after the metrics, don't worry about the logs. I'm going to go back to metrics. I'll just bring back what I had before so we can continue, if that's all right. I can't see the chat, so I assume that's okay. You can continue. Yep. All right, cool. I'm just going to continue. I'll count down when I'm going to continue from here. Just give me 1 sec. Five, four, three, two, one. So there are many other features of application insights. Let's go back to our Spring Boot app. So here we can see, as I said, all of our Spring Boot applications that were deployed. How did we deploy those? If we look at the source code on GitHub, you'll notice that we've created a GitHub Actions file. So this is our build process. So what we do is we build some jar files, we archive those files for further steps down here to deploy. So each of those jar files is then deployed. You'll notice we have pre-built GitHub Actions for deploying to Spring apps. So it saves you having to write custom scripts. So we have a section to deploy each of those applications. Now, we previously deployed this application, so let's go look at one of the previous runs. So here we can see the step that builds the jar files. Then we deploy our APIs that are dependent on the database. And lastly, we deploy the API front end, or the GUI. So here is the version that deploys to Spring apps, and later we'll look at the one that deploys to container apps. So let's go make a change and deploy that change out. So first of all, I could clone this code onto my machine, but I'm just going to go into code spaces and edit that code directly in my browser with VS Code. Now, it can take a little bit of time to start up a workspace in code spaces. I have one running from before, so it should be relatively quick. Maybe not. I guess you can, when you're editing, you can cut this part out until it starts. It must have stopped running, so it's going to take a minute to start up again. Okay, here we're in our code space. So we can see the code from that repository in our browser. Now, what I'm going to do is change the title that we see here on the home page and change this image of the cute puppy and kitten. So first of all, I'm going to put in some changes that I prepared earlier. So let's drop that in. So welcome to Pet Clinic for Future Ready App Summit 2022. And I've changed the image. So we have to wait and see what that image is. So let's go commit that change. I'm going to stage it. Changed welcome screen. Commit that. And then let's push those changes. So those changes have been pushed. So if we return back to our repository, we should see a new build has been kicked off. There we go. Changed welcome screen. Now this will take a few minutes to run, so we'll come back to it later. Now in the meantime, let's go look at a few more features of Spring Apps. So within Spring Apps, we looked at its integration with application insights. It also provides platform level metrics and logs as well. So in here, for example, I could, if you click on logs, in here, for example, I can run some custom queries to retrieve our container logs. So for example, I want to look at logs for the customer service and limit it to the last 500 entries. Now there is a way you can also stream these on the terminal. So we have a way to do that as well. And also, let's say, for example, we want to render a pie chart to see where are most of our errors or exceptions coming from. So again, we're using Custo query language here. You can see the raw data where we've tallied up the count per app, and then we've rendered a chart. So that can give us an idea of where exceptions are coming, so maybe we can investigate further. We can also stream the logs from the terminal. So we have a full Azure CLI integration with Spring Apps. So if I choose a Spring app, you can see we get logs coming through on the terminal. And if there's activity happening on that app, then this will actually stream that continuously. So let's exit from that. Now, for the metrics, as I mentioned, we might want to see, for example, what's the average app usage for CPU. Maybe you want to see the average memory usage for CPU. So these type of metrics and logs at the Spring Apps level are useful for overall kind of viewpoint and what's going on in terms of your resource utilization. If you want fine-grained metrics, that's where App Insights is better, because you can actually also emit custom metrics from your application. Let's see how our build is doing. It's a bit slow today. So we'll come back to that a bit later to see that that's deployed. And when we reload our application, we should see the change. Now let's take a quick look at container apps while we're waiting for that one. So with container apps, we've created what's called a container apps environment. Now within that environment, we have a number of apps. So for the simplicity in this demo, we've only deployed the API gateway component, which is the front end. Now there's no Kubernetes cluster for you to worry about, even though underneath, as Jay mentioned, there is a Kubernetes cluster. This is a serverless environment. You just create a container without worrying about any infrastructure. We've exposed the public endpoint, and here we can see we have the same experience. And you can see here in the URL, Azure Container Apps, whereas the other one says Azure Microservices, which is the domain we use for Spring Apps. Now you can set custom domains and custom certificates for these endpoints as well. Now, likewise, Container Apps is integrated with Azure Monitor as well. So you can also get logs and metrics. The Container Apps is also integrated with Azure Monitor for metrics and logs. So here, for example, we can query the container logs for the API gateway, and we can see them come up here. We can also do live log streaming directly in the Azure portal or from the CLI. Now we'll need to actually generate some traffic. And we can see that that would get streamed through. Now, because we're deploying a container in Container Apps, whereas we're deploying a jar file in Spring Apps, we have the ability to enter a console or a shell inside the container. Now, if you're using a distro-less container, there is no shell. In this case, we're running a lightweight Ubuntu image for our API gateway. So we can see that we can enter the container and see what's going on. So we can see that's an Ubuntu image. Now, what else do you get in Container Apps? So if we look at our Container app, it has some very convenient facilities. So let's say, for example, we want to offload authentication. We can connect an OpenID Connect provider to do that. We can set secrets. We can control ingress to be restricted to, for example, a private network only. Now, we are using GitHub Actions, but if you want to, you can do a simpler approach where you just connect your app directly to a Git repo, and it will continuously build once you commit a change to your repo. So it's more like a source to image type approach. Now, Jay briefly talked about Dapper. We won't go into much detail here, but Dapper is a powerful way you can extend your application, which is agnostic to the language runtime. So for example, if you want to connect to a message queue, let's say you're using RabbitMQ, and then tomorrow you decide to use Azure Service Bus, you can actually change the Dapper component mapping through a YAML file without having to change your code. So your code is decoupled from the implementation. So Dapper is an interesting area to look at further. Now, Container Apps are integrate with managed identity. So for example, there's no need to store connection strings or passwords. If you're accessing an Azure AD protected resource, you can assign roles and permissions to an identity that's managed for you. A new feature we've added is Service Connector. A good example of this is, let's say your application needs to talk to MySQL or Postgres. Normally, you would have to retrieve the connection string and store that in Key Vault or in a secret. Now, this feature simplifies setting up a connection to many of our Azure resources. Let's say, for example, a SQL database. So you go through and pick your resource. And if you go and complete all of this, essentially what will happen is it will create a connector which will then inject at runtime environment variables that your app can leverage to connect to a database without you having to worry about obtaining those through Key Vault or another means. You can also scale your containers. So for example, if we want to have more replicas, we can increase the number of replicas, and you can even use auto-scaling rules. For example, when we get more than 10 concurrent requests, we want to scale. Now, there's more to it than that, but we don't have time to go into that in detail. Right, let's have a look at our pipeline. It looks like our change has gone through. Now, if we reload the Spring Apps version, we can see our new message and our new image has appeared. And if we reload the Container Apps version, we can see that that's also been updated. So here we can create a continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline with ease. So that's all that we really have time for this to show you on this demo. We've only scratched the surface of what you can do with Azure Spring Apps and Azure Container Apps. hopefully you can see that they're quite productive without having to be an expert in Kubernetes or containers. And you can get your apps up and running very quickly, dynamically scale them, integrate monitoring and logging with ease, and also connect them with a CI/CD pipeline with minimal effort. That's all I have for you in this demo today. I hope you've enjoyed that and learned a bit about Azure Spring Apps and Azure Container Apps. Let's bring Jay back and we'll take you through some resources to help you continue your learning. Hi, Jay.
Hey, Clarence. Oh, thanks for your demo. It was excellent. It's always good to see something in action.
All right, so let's take a look at some of these resources that will help you.
Yeah, so if you are curious about overall Java on Azure, the product, services, and offering, you can always visit our landing page, aka.ms/Java on Azure. And if you are like hardcore Spring Boot, Spring Cloud developer who is keen on using our own SDK, you can visit aka.ms/Azure Spring Cloud 4. So 4 means actually version of the SDK we have.
And if you're interested in more hands-on workshops and things like that, there's a couple of links there. So that one there, the ASC training, it's a comprehensive step-by-step guide in deploying an application onto Spring Cloud, connecting it up with a database and so forth. Then the next one there is a container apps demo. Now that one is not specifically Spring or Java, but if you want to learn more about how to build a real-world multi-container application and deploy it on container apps, that's a really great resource. Then we've got more information. If you've got existing applications in your organization, maybe you've got quite a lot of them and you want some assistance in migrating them, we have a program that you can find out more about that's going to help you migrate and then modernize those applications. And lastly, if you want to just keep up to date with the latest news from Microsoft around Java, specifically for developers, then keep an eye on our blog that's linked there below. Well, that's all we have for you today. We really hope that you got a lot out of this session, and feel free to reach out if you've got any questions. We look forward to seeing you again on future sessions.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for your time.